button. That always helps. Pressing the right button works better every time. I meant to actually load this beforehand because it usually takes a minute. But anyway. So how's everybody doing? We'll do that and then we'll might as well share the stream, I guess. Wrong spot. Here? Yes. That works much better. And excuse me. So I hope everybody's doing well today. We're on year 7, winter 10, I think. And I should have horses shortly. Well, no, I should have horses. Yes. And I'm making a coop in Sunbury so I can put a lot of the chickens there. At least the universe of chickens. And all that kind of fun stuff. There we go. Audiobook, I know what it is, what I'm doing. Can I Prairie, there we go. Stardew Valley audiobook stream. You gotta get the Prairie King achievement. And there. Achievement. Wow. Probably not. Post. And my post was posted. And why? Geez, that was a pain. That's a pain. That's okay. Technical difficulties, I guess. Let's see. Ooh. So, yeah, we're doing book 2. Can't remember chapter numbers. Or not book 2. Patchwork Girl of Oz. Part 2. I think it's chapters 8 to 15 or something like that. Somewhere around there. I cannot remember exactly which ones it is. Oh yay, it's raining on the island. I need to catch one fish. well, technically 2 fish, but I need to catch at least one that's on the island during the rain in the evenings. So I've got a very short window. It's like 9 to 2 a.m. So 3, 4, 5 hours. Oops, wrong one. Wrong one again. Okay. 3 coconuts. I've got a lovely bunch of coconuts. Doodle-doo. Standing in a row. Small ones, big ones, some big as your head. Doo-doo. Okay, sorry. Anyway, I will start up the book for us. Let's see. And there.
Girl of Oz by Frank
There we go.
Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 9. They Meet the Woozy. There seem to be very few houses around here after all, remarked Ojo, after they had walked for a time in silence. Never mind, said Scraps. We are not looking for houses, but rather the road of yellow bricks. Won't it be funny to run along something yellow in this dismal blue country? There are worse colors than yellow in this country, asserted the Glass Cat in a spiteful tone. Oh, do you mean the pink pebbles you call your brains, and your red heart and green eyes? Asked the Patchwork Girl. No, I mean you, if you must know it, growled the cat. You're jealous, laughed Scraps. You'd give your whiskers for a lovely, variegated complexion like mine. I wouldn't, retorted the cat. I've the clearest complexion in the world, and I don't employ a beauty doctor either. I see you don't, said Scraps. Please don't quarrel, begged Ojo. This is an important journey, and quarreling makes me discouraged. To be brave, one must be cheerful, so I hope you will be as good-tempered as possible. They had traveled some distance when suddenly they faced a high fence which barred any further progress straight ahead. It ran directly across the road and enclosed a small forest of tall trees set close together. When the group of adventurers peered through the bars of the fence, they thought this forest looked more gloomy and forbidding than any they had ever seen before. They soon discovered that the path they had been following now made a bend and passed around the enclosure, but what made Ojo stop and look thoughtful was a sign painted on the fence which read, "Beware of the Woozy." "That means," he said, "that there's a Woozy inside that fence, and the Woozy must be a dangerous animal, or they wouldn't tell people to beware of it." "Let's keep out, then," replied Scraps. "That path is outside the fence, and Mr. Woozy may have all his little forest to himself, for all we care." "But one of our errands is to find a Woozy," Ojo explained. "The magician wants me to get 3 hairs from the end of a Woozy's tail." "Let's go and find some other Woozy," suggested the cat. "This one is ugly and dangerous, or they wouldn't cage him up. Maybe we shall find another that is tame and gentle." "Perhaps there isn't any other at all," answered Ojo. "The sign doesn't say 'Beware a Woozy.' It says 'Beware the Woozy,' which may mean there's only one in all the Land of Oz." "Then," said Scraps, "suppose we go in and find him. Very likely, if we ask him politely to let us pull 3 hairs out of the tip of his tail, he won't hurt us." "It would hurt him, I'm sure, and that would make him cross," said the cat. "You needn't worry, Bungle," remarked the Patchwork Girl, "for if there is danger you can climb a tree. Ojo and I are not afraid, are we, Ojo?" "I am a little," the boy admitted, "but this danger must be faced if we intend to save poor Unc Nunkie. How shall we get over the fence?" "Climb," answered Scraps, and at once she began climbing up the rows of bars. Ojo followed and found it more easy than he had expected. When they got to the top of the fence, they began to get down on the other side and soon were in the forest. The Glass Cat, being small, crept between the lower bars and joined them. Here there was no path of any sort, so they entered the woods, the boy leading the way, and wandered through the trees until they were nearly in the center of the forest. They now came upon a clear space in which stood a rocky cave. So far they had met no living creatures, but when Ojo saw the cave he knew it must be the den of the Woozy. It is hard to face any savage beast without a sinking of the heart, but still more terrifying is it to face an unknown beast which you have never seen even a picture of. So there is little wonder that the pulses of the Munchkin boy beat fast as he and his companions stood facing the cave. The opening was perfectly square and about big enough to admit a goat. "I guess the Woozy is asleep," said Scraps. "Shall I throw in a stone to waken him?" "No, please don't," answered Ojo, his voice trembling a little. "I'm in no hurry." But he had not long to wait, for the Woozy heard the sound of voices and came trotting out of his cave. As this is the only Woozy that has ever lived, either in the Land of Oz or out of it, I must describe it to you. The creature was all squares and flat surfaces and edges. Its head was an exact square, like one of the building blocks a child plays with. Therefore it had no ears, but heard sounds through two openings in the upper corners. Its nose, being in the center of a square surface, was flat, while the mouth was formed by the opening of the lower edge of the block. The body of the Woozy was much larger than its head, but it was likewise block-shaped, being twice as long as it was wide and high. The tail was square and stubby and perfectly straight, and the four legs were made in the same way, each being four-sided. The animal was covered with a thick, smooth skin and had no hair at all except at the extreme end of its tail, where there grew exactly 3 stiff, stubby hairs. The beast was dark blue in color, and his face was not fierce nor ferocious in expression, but rather good-humored and droll. Seeing the strangers, the Woozy folded his hind leg as if they had been hinged, and sat down to look his visitors over. "Well, well!" he exclaimed. "What a queer lot you are! At first I thought some of those miserable Munchkin farmers had come to annoy me, but I am relieved to find you in their stead. It is plain to me that you are a remarkable group, as remarkable in your own way as I am in mine, and so you are welcome to my domain. Nice place, isn't it? But lonesome, dreadfully lonesome." "Why did they shut you up here?" asked Scraps, who was regarding the queer square creature with some curiosity. "Because I eat up all the honey bees which the Munchkin farmers who live around here keep to make them honey." "Are you fond of eating honey bees?" inquired the boy. "Very. They are really delicious. But the farmers did not like to lose their bees, and so they tried to destroy me. Of course they couldn't do that." "Why not?" "My skin is so thick and tough that nothing can get through it to hurt me. So, finding they could not destroy me, they drove me into this forest and built a fence around me. Unkind, wasn't it?" "But what do you eat now?" asked Ojo. "Nothing at all. I've tried the leaves from the trees and the mosses and creeping vines, but they don't seem to suit my taste. So, there being no honey bees here, I've eaten nothing for years." "You must be awfully hungry," said the boy. "I've got some bread and cheese in my basket. Would you like that kind of food?" "Give me a nibble and I will try it. Then I can tell you better whether it is grateful to my appetite," returned the Woozy. So the boy opened his basket and broke a piece off the loaf of bread. He tossed it toward the Woozy, who cleverly caught it in his mouth and ate it in a twinkling. That's rather good," declared the animal. "Any more?" "Try some cheese," said Ojo, and threw down a piece. The Woozy ate that too, and smacked its long, thin lips. That's mighty good," it exclaimed. "Any more?" "Plenty," replied Ojo. So he sat down on a stump and fed the Woozy bread and cheese for a long time, for no matter how much the boy broke off, the loaf and the slice remained just as big. "That'll do," said the Woozy at last. "I'm quite full. I hope the strange food won't give me indigestion." "I hope not," said Ojo. "It's what I eat." "Well, I must say I'm much obliged, and I'm glad you came," announced the beast. "Is there anything I can do in return for your kindness?" "Yes," said Ojo earnestly. "You have it in your power to do me a great favor if you will." "What is it?" asked the Woozy. "Name the favor and I will grant it." "I want 3 hairs from the tip of your tail," said Ojo with some hesitation. "3 hairs? Why, that's all I have, on my tail or anywhere else," exclaimed the beast. "I know, but I want them very much." "They are my sole ornaments, my prettiest feature," said the Woozy uneasily. "If I give up those 3 hairs I'm just a blockhead." "Yet I must have them," insisted the boy firmly, and then he told the Woozy all about the accident to Unc Nunkie and Margolotte, and how the 3 hairs were to be a part of the magic charm that would restore them to life. The beast listened with attention, and when Ojo had finished the recital it said with a sigh: "I always keep my word, for I pride myself on being square. So you may have the 3 hairs, and welcome. I think under such circumstances it would be selfish in me to refuse you." Thank you very much!" cried the boy joyfully. "May I pull out the hairs now?" "Any time you like," answered the Woozy. So Ojo went up to the queer creature and, taking hold of one of the hairs, began to pull. He pulled harder. He pulled with all his might, but the hair remained fast. "What's the trouble?" asked the Woozy, which Ojo had dragged here and there all around the clearing in his endeavor to pull out the hair. "It won't come," said the boy, panting. "I was afraid of that," declared the beast. "You'll have to pull harder." "I'll help you!" exclaimed Scraps, coming to the boy's side. "You pull the hair and I'll pull you, and together we ought to get it out easily." "Wait a jiffy," called the Woozy, and then it went to a tree and hugged it with its front paws, so that its body couldn't be dragged around by the pull. "All ready now. Go ahead." Ojo grasped the hair with both hands and pulled with all his strength, while Scraps seized the boy around his waist and added her strength to his. But the hair wouldn't budge. Instead, it slipped out of Ojo's hands, and he and Scraps both rolled upon the ground in a heap and never stopped until they bumped against the rocky cave. "Give it up," advised the Glass Cat, as the boy arose and assisted the Patchwork Girl to her feet. "A dozen strong men couldn't pull out those hairs. I believe they're clinched in on the under side of the Woozy's thick skin." "Then what shall I do?" asked the boy, despairingly. "If on our return I fail to take these 3 hairs to the Crooked Magician, the other things I have come to seek will be of no use at all, and we cannot restore Unc Nunkie and Margolotte to life." "They're goners, I guess," said the Patchwork Girl.
"Never mind," added the cat. "I can't see that old Unc and Margalotte are worth all this trouble, anyhow."
But Ojo did not feel that way. He was so disheartened that he sat down upon a stump and began to cry. The Woozy looked at the boy thoughtfully. "Why don't you take me with you?" asked the beast. "Then, when at last you get to the magician's house, he can surely find some way to pull out those 3 hairs." Ojo was overjoyed at this suggestion. "That's it!" he cried, wiping away the tears and springing to his feet with a smile. "If I take the 3 hairs to the magician, it won't matter if they are still in your body." "It can't matter in the least," agreed the Woozy. "Come on, then," said the boy, picking up his basket. "Let us start at once. I have several other things to find, you know." But the Glass Cat gave a little laugh and inquired in her scornful way, "How do you intend to get the beast out of this forest?" That puzzled them all for a time. "Let us go to the fence, and then we may find a way," suggested Scraps. So they walked through the forest to the fence, reaching it at a point exactly opposite that where they had entered the enclosure. "How did you get in?" asked the Woozy. "We climbed over," answered Ojo. "I can't do that," said the beast. "I'm a very swift runner, for I can overtake a honey bee as it flies, and I can jump very high, which is the reason they made such a tall fence to keep me in. But I can't climb at all, and I'm too big to squeeze between the bars of the fence." Ojo tried to think what to do. "Can you dig?" he asked. "No," answered the Woozy, "for I have no claws. My feet are quite flat on the bottom of them. Nor can I gnaw away the boards, as I have no teeth." "You're not such a terrible creature, after all," remarked Scraps. "You haven't heard me growl, or you wouldn't say that," declared the Woozy. "When I growl, the sound echoes like thunder all through the valley and woodlands, and children tremble with fear, and women cover their heads with their aprons, and big men run and hide. I suppose there is nothing in the world so terrible to listen to as the growl of a Woozy." "Please don't growl, then," begged Ojo earnestly. "There is no danger of my growling, for I am not angry. Only when angry do I utter my fearful, ear-splitting, soul-shuddering growl. Also, when I am angry my eyes flash fire, whether I growl or not." "Real fire?" asked Ojo. "Of course, real fire. Do you suppose they'd flash imitation fire?" inquired the Woozy in an injured tone. "In that case I've solved the riddle," cried Snaps, dancing with glee. "Those fence boards are made of wood, and if the Woozy stands close to the fence and lets his eyes flash fire, they might set fire to the fence and burn it up. Then he could walk away with us easily, being free." "Ah, I have never thought of that plan, or I would have been free long ago," said the Woozy. "But I cannot flash fire from my eyes unless I am very angry." "Can't you get angry about something, please?" asked Ojo. "I'll try. You just say 'Krizzle Kroo' to me." "Will that make you angry?" inquired the boy. "Terribly angry." "What does it mean?" asked Scraps. "I don't know. That's what makes me so angry," replied the Woozy. He then stood close to the fence, with his head near one of the boards, and Scraps called out, "Krizzle Kroo." Then Ojo said, "Krizzle Kroo," and the Glass Cat said, "Krizzle Kroo." The Woozy began to tremble with anger, and small sparks darted from his eyes. Seeing this, they all cried, "Krizzle Kroo," together, and that made the beast's eyes flash fire so fiercely that the fence board caught the sparks and began to smoke. Then it burst into flame, and the Woozy stepped back and said triumphantly, "Aha! That did the business all right. It was a happy thought for you to yell all together, for that made me as angry as I have ever been. Fine sparks, weren't they?" "Regular fireworks," replied Scraps admiringly. In a few moments the board had burned to a distance of several feet, leaving an opening big enough for them all to pass through. Ojo broke some branches from a tree and with them whipped the fire until it was extinguished. "We don't want to burn the whole fence down," said he, "for the flames would attract the attention of the Munchkin farmers, who would then come and capture the Woozy again. I guess they'll be rather surprised when they find he's escaped." "So they will," declared the Woozy, chuckling gleefully. "When they find I'm gone, the farmers will be badly scared, for they'll expect me to eat up their honeybees, as I did before." "That reminds me," said the boy, "that you must promise not to eat honeybees while you are in our company." "None at all?" "Not a bee. You would get us all into trouble, and we can't afford to have any more trouble than is necessary. I'll feed you all the bread and cheese you want, and that must satisfy you." "All right, I'll promise," said the Woozy cheerfully. "And when I promise anything, you can depend on it, 'cause I'm square." "I don't see what difference that makes," observed the Patchwork Girl, as they found the path and continued their journey. "The shape doesn't make a thing honest, does it?" "Of course it does," returned the Woozy very decidedly. "No one could trust that Crooked Magician, for instance, just because he is crooked. But a square Woozy couldn't do anything crooked if he wanted to." "I'm neither square nor crooked," said Scraps, looking down at her plump body. "No, you're round, so you're liable to do anything," asserted the Woozy. "Do not blame me, Miss Gorgeous, if I regard you with suspicion. Many a satin ribbon has a cotton back." Scraps didn't understand this, but she had an uneasy misgiving that she had a cotton back herself. It would settle down at times and make her squat and dumpy, and then she had to roll herself in the road until her body stretched out again. End of chapter 9. Chapter 10 of the Patchwork Girl of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 10, Shaggy Man to the Rescue. They had not gone very far before Bungle, who had run on ahead, came bounding back to say that the road of yellow bricks was just before them. At once they hurried forward to see what this famous road looked like. It was a broad road, but not straight, for it wandered over hill and dale and picked out the easiest places to go. All its length and breadth was paved with smooth bricks of a bright yellow color, so it was smooth and level except in a few places where the bricks had crumbled or been removed, leaving holes that might cause the unwary to stumble. "I wonder," said Ojo, looking up and down the road, "which way to go." "Where are you bound for?" asked the Woozy. "The Emerald City," he replied. "Then go west," said the Woozy. "I know this road pretty well, for I've chased many a honey bee over it." "Have you ever been to the Emerald City?" asked Scraps. "No; I am very shy by nature, as you may have noticed, so I haven't mingled much in society." "Are you afraid of men?" inquired the Patchwork Girl. "Me? With my heart-rending growl? My horrible, shudderful growl? I should say not. I am not afraid of anything," declared the Woozy. "I wish I could say the same," sighed Ojo. "I don't think we need to be afraid when we get to the Emerald City, for Unc Nunkie has told me that Ozma, our girl Ruler, is very lovely and kind and tries to help everyone who is in trouble. But they say there are many dangers lurking on the road to the great fairy city, and so we must be very careful." "I hope nothing will break me," said the Glass Cat in a nervous voice. "I'm a little brittle, you know, and can't stand many hard knocks." "If anything could fade the colors on my lovely patches, it would break my heart," said the Patchwork Girl. "I'm not sure you have a heart," Ojo reminded her. "Then it would break my cotton," persisted Scraps. "Do you think they are all fast colors, Ojo?" she asked anxiously. "They seem fast enough when you run," he replied, and then looking ahead of them he exclaimed, "Oh, what lovely trees!" They were certainly pretty to look at, and the travelers hurried forward to observe them more closely. "Why, they're not trees at all," said Scraps. "They're just monstrous plants." That is what they really were, masses of great broad leaves which rose from the ground far into the air until they towered twice as high as the top of the Patchwork Girl's head, who was a little taller than Ojo. The plants formed rows on both sides of the road, and from each plant rose a dozen or more of the big, broad leaves, which swayed continually from side to side, although no wind was blowing. But the most curious thing about the swaying leaves was their color. They seemed to have a general groundwork of blue, but here and there other colors glinted at times through the blue. Gorgeous yellows turning to pink, purple, orange, and scarlet, mingled with more sober browns and grays, each appearing as a blotch or stripe anywhere on a leaf and then disappearing to be replaced by some other color of a different shape. The changeful coloring of the great leaves was very beautiful, but it was bewildering as well, and the novelty of the scene drew our travelers close to the lines of plants, where they stood watching them with rapt interest. Suddenly a leaf bent lower than usual and touched the Patchwork Girl. Swiftly it enveloped her in its embrace, covering her completely in its thick folds, and then it swayed back upon its stem. "Why, she's gone!" gasped Ojo in amazement, and listening carefully he thought he could hear the muffled screams of Scraps coming from the center of the folded leaf. But before he could think what he ought to do to save her, another leaf bent down and captured the Glass Cat, rolling around the little creature until she was completely hidden and then straightening up again upon its stem. "Look out!" cried the Woozy. "Run! Run fast or you are lost!" Ojo turned and saw the Woozy running swiftly up the road, but the last leaf of the row of plants seized the beast even as he ran, and instantly he disappeared from sight. The boy had no chance to escape. Half a dozen of the great leaves were bending toward him from different directions, and as he stood hesitating, one of them clutched him in its embrace. In a flash he was in the dark. Then he felt himself gently lifted until he was swaying in the air, with the folds of the leaf hugging him on all sides. At first he struggled hard to escape, crying out in anger, "Let me go! Let me go!" But neither struggles nor protests had any effect whatever. The leaf held him firmly, and he was a prisoner. Then Ojo quieted himself and tried to think. Despair fell upon him when he remembered that all his little party had been captured, even as he was, and there was none to save them. "I might have expected it," he sobbed miserably. "I'm Ojo the Unlucky, and something dreadful was sure to happen to me." He pushed against the leaf that held him and found it to be soft, but thick and firm. It was like a great bandage all around him, and he found it difficult to move his body or limbs in order to change their position. The minutes passed and became hours. Ojo wondered how long one could live in such a condition, and if the leaf would gradually sap his strength and even his life in order to feed itself. The little Munchkin boy had never heard of any person dying in the Land of Oz, but he knew one could suffer a great deal of pain. His greatest fear at this time was that he would always remain imprisoned in the beautiful leaf and never see the light of day again. No sound came to him through the leaf. All around was intense silence. Ojo wondered if Scraps had stopped screaming, or if the folds of the leaf prevented his hearing her. By and by, he thought he heard a whistle, as of someone whistling a tune. Yes, it really must be someone whistling, he decided, for he could follow the strains of a pretty Munchkin melody that Unc Nunkie used to sing to him. The sounds were low and sweet, and although they reached Ojo's ears very faintly, they were clear and harmonious. Could the leaf whistle? Ojo wondered. Nearer and nearer came the sounds, and then they seemed to be just the other side of the leaf that was hugging him. Suddenly the whole leaf toppled and fell, carrying the boy with it, and while he sprawled at full length the folds slowly relaxed and set him free. He scrambled quickly to his feet and found that a strange man was standing before him, a man so curious in appearance that the boy stared with round eyes. He was a big man with shaggy whiskers, shaggy eyebrows, shaggy hair, but kindly blue eyes that were gentle as those of a cow. On his head was a green velvet hat with a jeweled band, which was all shaggy around the brim. Rich but shaggy laces were at his throat. A coat with shaggy edges was decorated with diamond buttons. The velvet breeches had jeweled buckles at the knees and shags all around the bottoms. On his breast hung a medallion bearing a picture of Princess Dorothy of Oz, and in his hand, as he stood looking at Ojo, was a sharp knife shaped like a dagger. "Oh!" exclaimed Ojo, greatly astonished at the sight of this stranger, and then he added, "Who has saved me, sir?" "Can't you see?" replied the other with a smile. "I'm the Shaggy Man." "Yes, I can see that," said the boy, nodding. "Was it you who rescued me from the leaf?" "None other, you may be sure. But take care, or I shall have to rescue you again." Ojo gave a jump, for he saw several broad leaves leaning toward him. But the Shaggy Man began to whistle again, and at the sound the leaves all straightened up on their stems and kept still. The man now took Ojo's arm and led him up the road past the last of the great plants, and not till he was safely beyond their reach did he cease his whistling. "You see, the music charms 'em," said he. "Singing or whistling, it doesn't matter which, makes 'em behave, and nothing else will. I always whistle as I go by 'em, and so they always let me alone. Today, as I went by whistling, I saw a leaf curled and knew there must be something inside it. I cut down the leaf with my knife, and out you popped. Lucky I passed by, wasn't it?" "You were very kind," said Ojo, "and I thank you. Will you please rescue my companions also?" "What companions?" asked the Shaggy Man. "The leaves grabbed them all," said the boy. "There's a Patchwork girl and—" "A what?" "A girl made of patchwork, you know. She's alive, and her name is Scraps. And there is a glass cat—" "Glass?" asked the Shaggy Man. "All glass." "And alive?" "Yes," said Ojo. "She has pink brains. And there's a Woozy—" "What's a Woozy?" inquired the Shaggy Man. "Why, I can't describe it," answered the boy, greatly perplexed. "But it's a queer animal with 3 hairs on the tip of its tail that won't come out, and—" "What won't come out?" asked the Shaggy Man. "The tail?" "The hairs won't come out. But you'll see the Woozy if you'll please rescue it, and then you'll know just what it is." "Of course," said the Shaggy Man, nodding his shaggy head. And then he walked back among the plants, still whistling, and found the 3 leaves which were curled around Ojo's traveling companions. The first leaf he cut down released Scraps, and on seeing her the Shaggy Man threw back his shaggy head, opened wide his mouth, and laughed so shaggily and yet so merrily that Scraps liked him at once. Then he took off his hat and made her a low bow, saying, "My dear, you're a wonder. I must introduce you to my friend, the Scarecrow." When he cut down the second leaf, he rescued the Glass Cat, and Bungle was so frightened that she scampered away like a streak, and soon had joined Ojo, when she sat beside him panting and trembling. The last plant of all the row had captured the Woozy, and a big bunch in the center of the curled leaf showed plainly where he was. With his sharp knife, the Shaggy Man sliced off the stem of the leaf, and as it fell and unfolded, out trotted the Woozy and escaped beyond the reach of any more of the dangerous plants. End of chapter 10.
Chapter 11 of The Patchwork Girl of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 11. A Good Friend. Soon the entire party was gathered on the road of yellow bricks, quite beyond the reach of the beautiful but treacherous plants. The Shaggy Man, staring first at one and then at the other, seemed greatly pleased and interested. "I've seen queer things since I came to the Land of Oz," said he, "but never anything queerer than this band of adventurers. Let us sit down a while and have a talk and get acquainted." "Haven't you always lived in the Land of Oz?" asked the Munchkin boy. "No. I used to live in the big outside world, but I came here once with Dorothy, and Ozma let me stay." "How do you like Oz?" asked Scraps. "Isn't the country and the climate grand?" "It's the finest country in all the world, even if it is a fairyland, and I'm happy every minute I live in it," said the Shaggy Man. "But tell me something about yourselves." So Ojo related the story of his visit to the house of the Crooked Magician, and how he met there the Glass Cat, and how the Patchwork Girl was brought to life, and of the terrible accident to Unc Nunkie and Margolotte. Then he told how he had set out to find the 5 different things which the Magician needed to make a charm that would restore the marble figures to life, one requirement being 3 hairs from a Woozy's tail. "We found the Woozy," explained the boy, "and he agreed to give us the 3 hairs, but we couldn't pull them out, so we had to bring the Woozy along with us." "I see," returned the Shaggy Man, who had listened with interest to the story. "But perhaps I, who am big and strong, can pull those 3 hairs from the Woozy's tail." "Try it if you like," said the Woozy. So the Shaggy Man tried it, but pull as hard as he could, he failed to get the hairs out of the Woozy's tail. So he sat down again and wiped his shaggy face with a shaggy silk handkerchief and said, "It doesn't matter. If you can keep the Woozy until you get the rest of the things you need, you can take the beast and his 3 hairs to the Crooked Magician and let him find a way to extract them. What are the other things you are to find?" "One," said Ojo, "is a 6-leaved clover." "You ought to find that in the fields around the Emerald City," said the Shaggy Man. "There is a law against picking 6-leaved clovers, but I think I can get Ozma to let you have one." "Thank you," replied Ojo. "The next thing is the left wing of a yellow butterfly." "For that you must go to the Winkie Country," the Shaggy Man declared. "I've never noticed any butterflies there, but that is the Yellow Country of Oz, and it's ruled by a good friend of mine, the Tin Woodman." "Oh, I've heard of him!" exclaimed Ojo. "He must be a wonderful man." "So he is, and his heart is wonderfully kind. I'm sure the Tin Woodman will do all in his power to help you to save your Unc Nunkie and poor Margolotte." "The next thing I must find," said the Munchkin boy, "is a gill of water from a dark well." "Indeed!
Well, that is more difficult, said the Shaggy Man, scratching his left ear in a puzzled way. I've never heard of a dark well. Have you? No, said Ojo. Do you know where one may be found? Inquired the Shaggy Man. I can't imagine, said Ojo. Then we must ask the Scarecrow. The Scarecrow? But surely, sir, a Scarecrow can't know anything. Most scarecrows don't, I admit, answered the Shaggy Man. But this Scarecrow of whom I speak is very intelligent. He claims to possess the best brains in all Oz. Better than mine? Asked Scraps.
Better than mine? Echoed the Glass Cat. Mine are pink, and you can see 'em work.
Well, you can't see the Scarecrow's brains work, but they do a lot of clever thinking, asserted the Shaggy Man. If anyone knows where a dark well is, it's my friend the Scarecrow. Where does he live? Inquired Ojo. He has a splendid castle in the Winkie Country, near to the palace of his friend, the Tin Woodman, and he is often to be found in the Emerald City, where he visits Dorothy at the Royal Palace. Then we will ask him about the dark well, said Ojo. But what else does the Crooked Magician want? Asked the Shaggy Man. A drop of oil from a live man's body. Oh, but there isn't such a thing. That's what I thought, replied Ojo. But the Crooked Magician said it wouldn't be called for by the recipe if it couldn't be found, and therefore I must search until I find it. I wish you luck, said the Shaggy Man, shaking his head doubtfully. But I imagine you'll have a hard job getting a drop of oil from a live man's body. There's blood in a body, but no oil. There's cotton in mine, said Scraps, dancing a little jig. I don't doubt it, returned the Shaggy Man admiringly. You're a regular comforter and as sweet as Patchwork can be. All you lack is dignity. I hate dignity, cried Scraps, kicking a pebble high in the air and then trying to catch it as it fell. Half the fools and all the wise folks are dignified, and I'm neither the one nor the other.
She's just crazy,
explained the Glass Cat. The Shaggy Man laughed. She's delightful in her way, he said. I'm sure Dorothy will be pleased with her, and the Scarecrow will dote on her. Did you say you were traveling toward the Emerald City? Yes, replied Ojo. I thought that was the best place to go at first, because the six-leaved clover may be found there. I'll go with you, said the Shaggy Man, and show you the way. Thank you, exclaimed Ojo. I hope it won't put you out any. No, said the other. I wasn't going anywhere in particular. I've been a rover all my life, and although Ozma has given me a suite of beautiful rooms in her palace, I still get the wandering fever once in a while, and start out to roam the country over. I've been away from the Emerald City several weeks this time, and now that I've met you and your friends, I'm sure it will interest me to accompany you to the great city of Oz and introduce you to my friends. That will be very nice, said the boy gratefully. I hope your friends are not dignified, observed Scraps. Some are and some are not, he answered, but I never criticize my friends. If they are really true friends, they may be anything they like for all of me. There's some sense in that, said Scraps, nodding her queer head in approval. Come on, let's get to the Emerald City as soon as possible. With this, she ran up the path, skipping and dancing, and then turned to await them. It is quite a distance from here to the Emerald City, remarked the Shaggy Man, so we shall not get there today, nor tomorrow. Therefore, let us take the jaunt in an easy manner. I'm an old traveler, and have found that I never gain anything by being in a hurry. Take it easy is my motto. If you can't take it take it as easy as you can. After walking some distance over the road of yellow bricks, Ojo said he was hungry and would stop to eat some bread and cheese.
He offered a portion of the food to the Shaggy Man, who thanked him but refused it. "When I start out on my travels," said he, "I carry along enough square meals to last me several weeks. Think I'll indulge in one now, as long as we're stopped anyway." Saying this, he took a bottle from his pocket and shook from it a tablet about the size of one of Ojo's fingernails. "That," announced the Shaggy Man, "is a square meal in condensed form. Invention of the great Professor Wogglebug of the Royal College of Athletics. It contains soup, fish, roast meat, salad, apple dumplings, ice cream, and chocolate drops, all boiled down to this small size, so it can be conveniently carried and swallowed when you are hungry and need a square meal." "I'm square," said the Woozy. "Give me one, please." So the Shaggy Man gave the Woozy a tablet from his bottle, and the beast ate it in a twinkling. "You have now had a 6-course dinner," declared the Shaggy Man. "Pshaw!" said the Woozy ungratefully. "I want to taste something. There's no fun in that sort of eating." "One should only eat to sustain life," replied the Shaggy Man, "and that tablet is equal to a peck of other food." "I don't care for it. I want something I can chew and taste," grumbled the Woozy. "You are quite wrong, my poor beast," said the Shaggy Man in a tone of pity. "Think how tired your jaws would get chewing a square meal like this, if it were not condensed to the size of a small tablet, which you can swallow in a jiffy." "Chewy isn't tiresome, it's fun," maintained the Woozy. "I always chew the honeybees when I catch them. Give me some bread and cheese, Ojo." "No, no, you've already eaten a big dinner," protested the Shaggy Man. "Maybe," answered the Woozy, "but I guess I'll fool myself by munching some bread and cheese. I may not be hungry, having eaten all those things you gave me, but I consider this eating business a matter of taste, and I like to realize what's going into me." Ojo gave the beast what he wanted, but the Shaggy Man shook his shaggy head reproachfully and said there was no animal so obstinate or hard to convince as a Woozy. At that moment a patter of footsteps was heard, and looking up, they saw the live phonograph standing before them. It seemed to have passed through many adventures since Ojo and his companions last saw the machine, for the varnish of its wooden case was all marred and dented and scratched in a way that gave it an aged and disreputable appearance. "Dear me!" exclaimed Ojo, staring hard. "What has happened to you?" "Nothing much," replied the phonograph in a sad and depressed voice. "I've had enough things thrown at me since I left you to stock a department store and furnish half a dozen bargain counters." "Are you so broken that you can't play?" asked Scraps. "No, I am still able to grind out delicious music. Just now I've a record on tap that is really superb," said the phonograph, growing more cheerful. "That is too bad," remarked Ojo. "We've no objection to you as a machine, you know, but as a music maker we hate you."
Then why was I ever invented?" demanded the machine in a tone of indignant protest.
They looked at one another inquiringly, but no one could answer such a puzzling question. Finally the Shaggy Man said: "I'd like to hear the phonograph play." Ojo sighed. "We've been very happy since we met you, sir," he said. "I know, but a little misery at times makes one appreciate happiness more. Tell me, Phony, what is this record like which you say you have on tap?"
"It's a popular song, sir. In all civilized lands the common people have gone wild over it."
"Makes civilized folks wild folks, eh? Then it's dangerous."
"Wild with joy, I mean," explained the phonograph. "Listen. This song will prove a rare treat to you, I know. It made the author rich for an author. It is called My Lulu."
Then the phonograph began to play. A strain of odd, jerky sounds was followed by these words, sung by a man through his nose with great vigor of expression.
"I want my Lulu, my coal black Lulu. I want my Lulu, a Lulu, Lulu, Lulu. I want my Lulu, my coal black Lulu. There ain't nobody else loves Lulu, Lulu."
"Here, shut that off!" cried the Shaggy Man, springing to his feet. "What do you mean by such impertinence?"
"It's the latest popular song," declared the phonograph, speaking in a
Sulky tone of voice.
"A popular song?" "Yes. One that the feeble minded can remember the words of, and those ignorant of music can whistle or sing. That makes a popular song popular. And the time is coming when it will take the place of all other songs."
"That time won't come for us just yet," said the Shaggy Man sternly. "I'm something of a singer myself, and I don't intend to be throttled by any Lulus like your coal black one. I shall take you all apart, Mr. Phony, and scatter your pieces far and wide over the country as a matter of kindness to the people you might meet if allowed to run around loose. Having performed this painful duty, I shall—" But before he could say more, the phonograph turned and dashed up the road as fast as its 4 table legs could carry it, and soon it had entirely disappeared from their view. The Shaggy Man sat down again and seemed well pleased. "Someone else will save me the trouble of scattering that phonograph," said he, "for it is not possible that such a music maker can last long in the Land of Oz. When you are rested, friends, let us go on our way." During the afternoon the travelers found themselves in a lonely and uninhabited part of the country. Even the fields were no longer cultivated, and the country began to resemble a wilderness. The road of yellow bricks seemed to have been neglected and became uneven and more difficult to walk upon. Scrubby underbrush grew on either side of the way, while huge rocks were scattered around in abundance. But this did not deter Ojo and his friends from trudging on, and they beguiled the journey with jokes and cheerful conversation. Toward evening they reached a crystal spring which gushed from a tall rock by the roadside, and near this spring stood a deserted cabin. Said the Shaggy Man, halting here: "We may as well pass the night here, where there is shelter for our heads and good water to drink. Road beyond here is pretty bad. Worst we shall have to travel, so let's wait until morning before we tackle it." They agreed to this, and Ojo found some brushwood in the cabin and made a fire on the hearth. The fire delighted Scraps, who danced before it until Ojo warned her she might set fire to herself and burn up. After that, the Patchwork Girl kept at a respectful distance from the darting flames, but the Woozy lay down before the fire like a big dog and seemed to enjoy its warmth. For supper the Shaggy Man ate one of his tablets, but Ojo stuck to his bread and cheese as the most satisfying food. He also gave a portion to the Woozy. When darkness came on, they sat in a circle on the cabin floor, facing the firelight, there being no furniture of any sort in the place. Ojo said to the Shaggy Man: "Won't you tell us a story?" "I'm not good at stories," was the reply, "but I sing like a bird." "Raven or crow?" asked the Glass Cat. "Like a song bird. I'll prove it. I'll sing a song I composed myself. Don't tell anyone I'm a poet. They might want me to write a book. Don't tell 'em I can sing, or they'll want me to make records for that awful phonograph. Haven't time to be a public benefactor, so I'll just sing you this little song for your own amusement."
They were glad enough to be entertained, and listened with interest while the Shaggy Man chanted the following verses to a tune that was not unpleasant. I'll sing a song of Ozland, where wondrous creatures dwell, and fruits and flowers and shady bowers abound in every dell, where magic is a science, and where no one shows surprise if some amazing things take place before his very eyes. Our ruler's a bewitching girl, whom fairies love to please. She's always kept her magic scepter to enforce her decrees. To make her people happy, for her heart is kind and true, and to aid the needy and distressed is what she longs to do. And then there's Princess Dorothy, as sweet as any rose, a lass from Kansas, where they don't grow fairies, I suppose. And there's the brainy Scarecrow, with a body stuffed with straw, who utters words of wisdom rare that fill us all with awe. I'll not forget Nick Chopper, the woodman made of tin, whose tender heart thinks killing time is quite a dreadful sin. Nor old Professor Wogglebug, who's highly magnified, and looks so big to everyone that he is filled with pride. Jack Pumpkinhead's a dear old chum, who might be called a chump, but one renowned by riding round upon a magic gump. The Sawhorse is a splendid steed, and though he's made of wood, he does as many thrilling stunts as any meat horse could. And now I'll introduce the beast that everyone adores. The Cowardly Lion shakes with fear most every time he roars, and yet he does the bravest things that any lion might, because he knows that cowardice is not considered right. There's Tik-Tok, he's a clockwork man and quite a funny sight. He talks and walks mechanically when he's wound up tight. And we've got a hungry tiger who would babies love to eat, but never does because we feed him other kinds of meat. It's hard to name all of the freaks this noble land's acquired. 'Twould make my song so very long that you would soon be tired. But give attention when I mention one wise yellow hen, and 9 fine tiny piglets living in a golden pen. Now search the whole world over, sail the seas from coast to coast. No other nation in creation queerer folks can boast. And now our rare museum will include a cat of glass, a woozy, and, last but not least, a crazy patchwork lass. Ojo was so pleased with this song that he applauded the singer by clapping his hands, and Scraps followed suit by clapping her padded fingers together, although they made no noise. The cat pounded on the floor with her glass paws, gently so as not to break them, and the Woozy, which had been asleep, woke up to ask what the row was about. I seldom sing in public for fear they might want me to start an opera company, remarked the Shaggy Man, who was pleased to know his effort was appreciated. Voice just now is a little out of training, rusty perhaps. Tell me, said the Patchwork Girl earnestly, do all these queer people you mentioned really live in the land of Oz? Every one of 'em. I even forgot one thing, Dorothy's pink kitten.
For goodness sake, exclaimed Bungle, sitting up and looking interested. A pink kitten? How absurd! Is it glass?
No, just ordinary kitten.
Then it can't amount to much. I have pink brains, and you can see 'em work.
Dorothy's kitten is all pink, brains and all, except blue eyes. Name's Eureka. Great favorite at the royal palace, said the Shaggy Man, yawning. The Glass Cat seemed annoyed.
Do you think a pink kitten, common meat, is as pretty as I am? She asked.
Can't say. Tastes differ, you know, replied the Shaggy Man, yawning again. But here's a pointer that may be of service to you. Make friends with Eureka, and you'll be solid at the palace.
I'm solid now, solid glass.
You don't understand, rejoined the Shaggy Man sleepily. Anyhow, make friends with the pink kitten and you'll be all right. If the pink kitten despises you, look out for breakers." "Would anyone at the royal palace break a glass cat?" "Might. You never can tell. Advise you to purr soft and look humble if you can. And now I'm going to bed." Bungle considered the Shaggy Man's advice so carefully that her pink brains were busy long after the others of the party were fast asleep. End of chapter 11.
Chapter 12 of The Patchwork Girl of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 12 The Giant Porcupine. Next morning they started out bright and early to follow the road of yellow bricks toward the Emerald City. The little Munchkin boy was beginning to feel tired from the long walk, and he had a great many things to think of and consider besides the events of the journey. At the wonderful Emerald City, which he would presently reach, were so many strange and curious people that he was half afraid of meeting them and wondering if they would prove friendly and kind. Above all else, he could not drive from his mind the important errand on which he had come, and he was determined to devote every energy to finding the things that were necessary to prepare the magic recipe. He believed that until dear Unc Nunkie was restored to life, he could feel no joy in anything, and often he wished that Unc could be with him to see all the astonishing things Ojo was seeing. But alas, Unc Nunkie was now a marble statue in the house of the Crooked Magician, and Ojo must not falter in his efforts to save him. The country through which they were passing was still rocky and deserted, with here and there a bush or a tree to break the dreary landscape. Ojo noticed one tree especially, because it had such long, silky leaves and was so beautiful in shape. As he approached it, he studied the tree earnestly, wondering if any fruit grew on it or if it bore pretty flowers. Suddenly he became aware that he had been looking at that tree a long time, at least for 5 minutes, and it had remained in the same position, although the boy had continued to walk steadily on. So he stopped short, and when he stopped, the tree and all the landscape, as well as his companions, moved on before him and left him far behind. Ojo uttered such a cry of astonishment that it aroused the Shaggy Man, who also halted. The others then stopped too and walked back to the boy. "What's wrong?" asked the Shaggy Man. "Why, we're not moving forward a bit, no matter how fast we walk," declared Ojo. "Now that we have stopped, we are moving backward. Can't you see? Just notice that rock." Scraps looked down at her feet and said, "The yellow bricks are not moving." "But the whole road is," answered Ojo. "True, quite true," agreed the Shaggy Man. "I know all about the tricks of this road, but I have been thinking of something else and didn't realize where we were." "It will carry us back to where we started from," predicted Ojo, beginning to be nervous. "No," replied the Shaggy Man, "it won't do that, for I know a trick to beat this tricky road. I've traveled this way before, you know. Turn around, all of you, and walk backward." "What good will that do?" asked the cat. "You'll find out if you obey me," said the Shaggy Man. So they all turned their backs to the direction in which they wished to go and began walking backward. In an instant Ojo noticed they were gaining ground, and as they proceeded in this curious way they soon passed the tree which had first attracted his attention to their difficulty. "How long must we keep this up, Shags?" asked Scraps, who was constantly tripping and tumbling down, only to get up again with a laugh at her mishap. "Just a little way farther," replied the Shaggy Man. A few minutes later he called to them to turn around quickly and step forward, and as they obeyed the order
they found themselves treading solid ground. "That task is well over," observed the Shaggy Man. "It's a little tiresome to walk backward, but that is the only way to pass this part of the road, which has a trick of sliding back and carrying with it anyone who is walking upon it." With new courage and energy they now trudged forward, and after a time came to a place where the road cut through a low hill, leaving high banks on either side of it. They were traveling along this cut, talking together, when the Shaggy Man seized Scraps with one arm and Ojo with another and shouted, "Stop!" "What's wrong now?" asked the Patchwork Girl. "See there," answered the Shaggy Man, pointing with his finger. Directly in the center of the road lay a motionless object that bristled all over with sharp quills, which resembled arrows. The body was as big as a 10-bushel basket, but the projecting quills made it appear to be 4 times bigger. "Well, what of it?" asked Scraps. "That is Chiss, who causes a lot of trouble along this road," was the reply. "Chiss? What is Chiss?" "I think it is merely an overgrown porcupine, but here in Oz they consider Chiss an evil spirit. He's different from a regular porcupine because he can throw his quills in any direction, which an American porcupine cannot do. That's what makes old Chiss so dangerous. If we get too near, he'll fire those quills at us and hurt us badly." "Then we will be foolish to get too near," said Scraps. "I'm not afraid," declared the Woozy. "The Chiss is cowardly, I'm sure. And if it ever heard my awful, terrible, frightful growl, it would be scared stiff." "Oh, can you growl?" asked the Shaggy Man. "That is the only ferocious thing about me," asserted the Woozy with evident pride. "My growl makes an earthquake blush and the thunder ashamed of itself. If I growled at that creature you call Chiss, it would immediately think the world had cracked in two and bumped against the sun and moon, and that would cause the monster to run as far and fast as its legs would carry it." "In that case," said the Shaggy Man, "you are now able to do us a great favor. Please growl."
"But you forget," returned the Woozy. "My tremendous growl would also frighten you, and if you happen to have heart disease, you might expire."
"True, but we must take that risk," declared the Shaggy Man bravely. "Being warned of what is to occur, we must try to bear the terrific noise of your growl. But Chiss won't expect it, and it will scare him away." The Woozy hesitated. "I'm fond of you all, and I hate to shock you," it said. "Never mind," said Ojo. "You may be made deaf. If so, we will forgive you." "Very well, then," said the Woozy in a determined voice, and advanced a few steps toward the giant porcupine. Pausing to look back, it asked, "All ready?" "All ready," they answered. "Then cover up your ears and brace yourselves firmly. Now then, look out." The Woozy turned toward Chiss, opened wide its mouth, and said, "Queek!" "Go ahead and growl," said Scraps. "Why, I did growl," retorted the Woozy, who seemed much astonished. "What? That little squeak?" she cried. "It is the most awful growl that ever was heard, on land or sea, in caverns or in the sky," protested the Woozy. "I wonder you stood the shock so well. Didn't you feel the ground tremble? I suppose Chiss is quite dead with fright." The Shaggy Man laughed merrily. "Poor Wooz," said he; "your growl wouldn't scare a fly." The Woozy seemed to be humiliated and surprised. It hung its head a moment, as if in shame or sorrow, but then it said with renewed confidence,
Anyhow, my eyes can flash fire, and good fire too, good enough to set fire to a fence." "That is true," declared Scraps. "I saw it done myself. But your ferocious growl isn't as loud as the tick of a beetle, or one of Ojo's snores when he's fast asleep." "Perhaps," said the Woozy humbly, "I have been mistaken about my growl. It has always sounded very fearful to me, but that may have been because it was so close to my ears." "Never mind," Ojo said soothingly. "It is a great talent to be able to flash fire from your eyes. No one else can do that." As they stood hesitating what to do, Chiss stirred, and suddenly a shower of quills came flying toward them, almost filling the air, there were so many. Scraps realized in an instant that they had gone too near to Chiss for safety. So she sprang in front of Ojo and shielded him from the darts, which struck their points into her own body until she resembled one of those targets they shoot arrows at in archery games. The Shaggy Man dropped flat on his face to avoid the shower, but one quill struck him in the leg and went far in. As for the Glass Cat, the quills rattled off her body without making even a scratch, and the skin of the Woozy was so thick and tough that he was not hurt at all. When the attack was over, they all ran to the Shaggy Man, who was moaning and groaning, and Scraps promptly pulled the quill out of his leg. Then up he jumped and ran over to Chiss, putting his foot on the monster's neck and holding it prisoner. The body of the great porcupine was now as smooth as leather, except for the holes where the quills had been, for it had shot every single quill in that one wicked shower.
"Let me go!"
it shouted angrily.
"How dare you put your foot on Chiss?"
"I'm going to do worse than that, old boy," replied the Shaggy Man. "You have annoyed travelers on this road long enough, and now I shall put an end to you."
"You can't,"
returned Chiss.
"Nothing can kill me, as you know perfectly well."
"Perhaps that is true," said the Shaggy Man in a tone of disappointment. "Seems to me I've been told before that you can't be killed. But if I let you go, what will you do?"
"Pick up my quills again,"
said Chiss in a sulky voice. "And then shoot them at more travelers? No, that won't do. You must promise me to stop throwing quills at people."
"I won't promise anything of the sort," declared Chiss.
"Why not?"
"Because it is my nature to throw quills, and every animal must do what nature intends it to do. It isn't fair for you to blame me. If it were wrong for me to throw quills, then I wouldn't be made with quills to throw. The proper thing for you to do is to keep out of my way."
"Well, there's some sense in that argument," admitted the Shaggy Man thoughtfully. "But people who are strangers and don't know you are here won't be able to keep out of your way."
"Tell you what,"
said Scraps, who was trying to pull the quills out of her own body. "Let's gather up all the quills and take them away with us. Then old Chiss won't have any left to throw at people." "Ah, that's a clever idea. You and Ojo must gather up the quills while I hold Chiss a prisoner, for if I let him go he will get some of his quills and be able to throw them again." So Scraps and Ojo picked up all the quills and tied them in a bundle so they might easily be carried. After this the Shaggy Man released Chiss and let him go, knowing that he was harmless to injure anyone.
"It's the meanest trick I ever heard of," muttered the Porcupine gloomily. "How would you like it, Shaggy Man, if I took all your shags away from you?"
"If I threw my shags and hurt people, you would be welcome to capture them," was the reply. Then they walked on and left Chiss standing in the road, sullen and disconsolate. The Shaggy Man limped as he walked, for his wound still hurt him, and Scraps was much annoyed because the quills had left a number of small holes in her patches. When they came to a flat stone by the roadside, The Shaggy Man sat down to rest, and then Ojo opened his basket and took out the bundle of charms the Crooked Magician had given him. "I am Ojo the Unlucky," he said, "or we would never have met that dreadful porcupine. But I will see if I can find anything among these charms which will cure your leg." Soon he discovered that one of the charms was labeled "For Flesh Wounds," and this the boy separated from the others. It was only a bit of dried root, taken from some unknown shrub, but the boy rubbed it upon the wound made by the quill, and in a few moments the place was healed entirely, and the Shaggy Man's leg was as good as ever. "Rub it on the holes in my patches," suggested Scraps, and Ojo tried it, but without any effect. "The charm you need is a needle and thread," said the Shaggy Man. "But do not worry, my dear. Those holes do not look badly at all." "They'll let in the air, and I don't want people to think I'm airy, or that I'm stuck up," said the Patchwork Girl. "You were certainly stuck up until we pulled out those quills," observed Ojo with a laugh. So now they went on again, and coming presently to a pond of muddy water, they tied a heavy stone to the bundle of quills and sunk it to the bottom of the pond to avoid carrying it farther. End of chapter 12.
Chapter 13 of The Patchwork Girl of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 13. Scraps and the Scarecrow. From here on, the country improved, and the desert places began to give way to fertile spots. Still, no houses were yet to be seen near the road. There were some hills with valleys between them, and on reaching the top of one of these hills, the traveler found before them a high wall running to the right and the left as far as their eyes could reach. Immediately in front of them, where the wall crossed the roadway, stood a gate having stout iron bars that extended from top to bottom. They found, on coming nearer, that this gate was locked with a great padlock, rusty through lack of use. "Well," said Scraps, "I guess we'll stop here." "It's a good guess," replied Ojo. "Our way is barred by this great wall and gate. It looks as if no one had passed through in many years." "Looks are deceiving," declared the Shaggy Man, laughing at their disappointed faces. "And this barrier is the most deceiving thing in all Oz." "It prevents our going any farther, anyhow," said Scraps. "There is no one to mind the gate and let people through, and we've no key to the padlock." "True," replied Ojo, going a little nearer to peep through the bars of the gate. "What shall we do, Shaggy Man? If we had wings we might fly over the wall, but we cannot climb it, and unless we get to the Emerald City I won't be able to find the things to restore Unc Nunkie to life." "All very true," answered the Shaggy Man quietly, "but I know this gate, having passed through it many times." "How?" they all eagerly inquired. "I'll show you how," said he. He stood Ojo in the middle of the road and placed Scraps just behind him, with her padded hands on his shoulders. After the Patchwork Girl came the Woozy, who held a part of her skirt in his mouth. Then, last of all, was the Glass Cat, holding fast to the Woozy's tail with her glass jaws. "Now," said the Shaggy Man, "you must all shut your eyes tight and keep them shut until I tell you to open them." "I can't," objected Scraps. "My eyes are buttons and they won't shut." So the Shaggy Man tied his red handkerchief over the Patchwork Girl's eyes and examined all the others to make sure they had their eyes fast shut and could see nothing. "What's the game, anyhow, blind man's buff?" asked Scraps. "Keep quiet," commanded the Shaggy Man sternly. "All ready? Then follow me." He took Ojo's hand and led him forward over the road of yellow bricks toward the gate. Holding fast to one another, they all followed in a row, expecting every minute to bump against the iron bars. The Shaggy Man also had his eyes closed, but marched straight ahead nevertheless, and after he had taken 100 steps by actual count, he stopped and said, "Now you may open your eyes." They did so, and to their astonishment found the wall and the gateway far behind them, while in front the former blue country of the Munchkins had given way to green fields, with pretty farmhouses scattered among them. "That wall," explained the Shaggy Man, "is what is called an optical illusion. It is quite real while you have your eyes open, but if you are not looking at it, the barrier doesn't exist at all. It's the same way with many other evils in life. They seem to exist, and yet it's all seeming and not true. You will notice that the wall, or what we thought was a wall, separates the Munchkin country from the green country that surrounds the Emerald City, which lies exactly in the center of Oz. There are 2 roads of yellow bricks through the Munchkin country, but the one we followed is the best of the 2. Dorothy once traveled the other way and met with more dangers than we did. But all our troubles are over for the present, as another day's journey will bring us to the great Emerald City." They were delighted to know this and proceeded with new courage. In a couple of hours they stopped at a farmhouse, where the people were very hospitable and invited them to dinner. The farm folk regarded Scraps with much curiosity but no great astonishment, for they were accustomed to seeing extraordinary people in the Land of Oz. The woman of this house got her needle and thread and sewed up the holes made by the porcupine quills in the Patchwork Girl's body, after which Scraps was assured she looked as beautiful as ever. "You ought to have a hat to wear," remarked the woman, "for that would keep the sun from fading the colors of your face. I have some patches and scraps put away, and if you will wait 2 or 3 days I'll make you a lovely hat that will match the rest of you." "Never mind the hat," said Scraps, shaking her yarn braids. "It's a kind offer, but we can't stop. I can't see that my colors have faded a particle as yet. Can you?" "Not much," replied the woman. "You are still very gorgeous, in spite of your long journey." The children of the house wanted to keep the Glass Cat to play with, so Bungle was offered a good home if she would remain, but the cat was too much interested in Ojo's adventures and refused to stop. "Children are rough playmates," she remarked to the Shaggy Man, "and although this home is more pleasant than that of the Crooked Magician, I fear I would soon be smashed to pieces by the boys and girls." After they had rested themselves, they renewed their journey, finding the road now smooth and pleasant to walk upon, and the country growing more beautiful the nearer they drew to the Emerald City. By and by Ojo began to walk on the green grass, looking carefully around him. "What are you trying to find?" asked Scraps. "A 6-leaved clover," said he. "Don't do that!" exclaimed the Shaggy Man earnestly. "It's against the law to pick a 6-leaved clover. You must wait until you get Ozma's consent." "She wouldn't know it," declared the boy. "Ozma knows many things," said the Shaggy Man. "In her room is a magic picture that shows any scene in the Land of Oz where strangers or travelers happen to be. She may be watching the picture of us even now and noticing everything that we do." "Does she always watch the magic picture?" asked Ojo. "Not always, for she has many other things to do; but as I said, she may be watching us this very minute." "I don't care," said Ojo in an obstinate tone of voice. "Ozma's only a girl." The Shaggy Man looked at him in surprise. "You ought to care for Ozma," said he, "if you expect to save your uncle. For if you displease our powerful ruler, your journey will surely prove a failure. Whereas if you make a friend of Ozma, she will gladly assist you. As for her being a girl, that is another reason why you should obey her laws, if you are courteous and polite. Everyone in Oz loves Ozma and hates her enemies, for she is as just as she is powerful." Ojo sulked a while, but finally returned to the road and kept away from the green clover. The boy was moody and bad tempered for an hour or two afterward, because he could really see no harm in picking a six-leaved clover if he found one, and in spite of what the Shaggy Man had said, he considered Ozma's law to be unjust. They presently came to a beautiful grove of tall and stately trees, through which the road wound in sharp curves, first one way and then another. As they were walking through this grove, they heard someone in the distance singing, and the sound grew nearer and nearer until they could distinguish the words, although the bend in the road still hid the singer. The song was something like this: "Here's to the hale old bale of straw that's cut from waving grain, the sweetest sight man ever saw in forest, dell, or plain. It fills me with a crinkling joy, a straw stack to behold, for then I pad this lucky boy with strands of yellow gold." "Ah!" exclaimed the Shaggy Man, "here comes my friend the Scarecrow." "What? A live scarecrow?" asked Ojo. "Yes, the one I told you of. He's a splendid fellow and very intelligent. You'll like him, I'm sure." Just then the famous Scarecrow of Oz came around the bend in the road, riding astride a wooden Sawhorse which was so small that its rider's legs nearly touched the ground. The Scarecrow wore the blue dress of the Munchkins, in which country he was made, and on his head was set a peaked hat with a flat brim trimmed with tinkling bells. A rope was tied around the waist to hold him in shape, for he was stuffed with straw in every part of him except the top of his head, where at one time the Wizard of Oz had placed sawdust mixed with needles and pins to sharpen his wits. The head itself was merely a bag of cloth fastened to the body at the neck, and on the front of this bag was painted the face, ears, eyes, nose and mouth. The Scarecrow's face was very interesting, for it bore a comical and yet winning expression, although one eye was a bit larger than the other, and the ears were not mates. The Munchkin farmer who had made the Scarecrow had neglected to sew him together with close stitches, and therefore some of the straw with which he was stuffed was inclined to stick out between the seams. His hands consisted of padded white gloves, with the fingers long and rather limp, and on his feet he wore Munchkin boots of blue leather with broad turns at the tops of them. The Sawhorse was almost as curious as its rider. It had been rudely made, in the beginning, to saw logs upon, so that its body was a short length of a log and its legs were stout branches fitted into 4 holes made in the body. The tail was formed by a small branch that had been left on the log, while the head was a gnarled bump on one end of the body. 2 knots of wood formed the eyes, and the mouth was a gash chopped in the log. When the Sawhorse first came to life, it had no ears at all, and so could not hear. But the boy who then owned him had whittled 2 ears out of bark and stuck them in the head, after which the Sawhorse heard very distinctly. This queer wooden horse was a great favorite with Princess Ozma, who had caused the bottoms of its legs to be shod with plates of gold, so the wood would not wear away. Its saddle was made of cloth of gold, richly encrusted with precious gems. It had never worn a bridle. As the Scarecrow came in sight of the party of travelers, He reined in his wooden steed and dismounted, greeting the Shaggy Man with a smiling nod. Then he turned to stare at the Patchwork Girl in wonder, while she in turn stared at him. "Shags," he whispered, drawing the Shaggy Man aside, "pat me into shape, there's a good fellow." While his friend punched and patted the Scarecrow's body to smooth out the humps, Scraps turned to Ojo and whispered, "Roll me out, please. I've sagged down dreadfully from walking so much, and men like to see a stately figure." She then fell upon the ground, and the boy rolled her back and forth like a rolling pin until the cotton had filled all the spaces in her patchwork covering and the body had lengthened to its fullest extent. Scraps and the Scarecrow both finished their hasty toilets at the same time, and again they faced each other. "Allow me, Miss Patchwork," said the Shaggy Man, "to present my friend, the Right Royal Scarecrow of Oz. Scarecrow, this is Miss Scraps Patches. Scraps, this is Scarecrow. Scarecrow, Scraps, Scraps, Scarecrow." They both bowed with much dignity. "Forgive me for staring so rudely," said the Scarecrow, "but you are the most beautiful sight my eyes have ever beheld." "That is a high compliment from one who is himself so beautiful," murmured Scraps, casting down her suspender button eyes by lowering her head. "But tell me, good sir, are you not a trifle lumpy?" "Yes, of course; that's my straw, you know. It bunches up sometimes, in spite of all my efforts to keep it even. Doesn't your straw ever bunch?" "Oh, I'm stuffed with cotton," said Scraps. "It never bunches, but it's inclined to pack down and make me sag. But cotton is high grade stuffing. I may say it is even more stylish, not to say aristocratic, than straw," said the Scarecrow politely. "Still, it is but proper that one so entrancingly lovely should have the best stuffing there is going. I'm so glad I've met you, Miss Scraps. Introduce us again, Shaggy." "Once is enough," replied the Shaggy Man, laughing at his friend's enthusiasm. "Then tell me where you found her, and, dear me, what a queer cat! What are you made of? Gelatin?" "Pure glass," answered the cat, proud to have attracted the Scarecrow's attention. "I am much more beautiful than the Patchwork Girl. I'm transparent, and Scraps isn't. I've pink brains, you can see 'em work, and I've a ruby heart, finely polished, while Scraps hasn't any heart at all." "No more have I," said the Scarecrow, shaking hands with Scraps, as if to congratulate her on the fact. "I've a friend, the Tin Woodman, who has a heart, but I find I get along pretty well without one. And so, well, well, here's a little Munchkin boy, too. Shake hands, my little man. How are you?" Ojo placed his hand in the flabby stuffed glove that served the Scarecrow for a hand, and the Scarecrow pressed it so cordially that the straw in his glove crackled. Meantime the Woozy had approached the Sawhorse and begun to sniff at it. The Sawhorse resented this familiarity, and with a sudden kick pounded the Woozy squarely on its head with one gold shod foot. "Take that, you monster!" it cried angrily. The Woozy never even winked. "To be sure," he said, "I'll take anything I have to. But don't make me angry, you wooden beast, or my eyes will flash fire and burn you up." The Sawhorse rolled its knot eyes wickedly and kicked again. But the Woozy trotted away and said to the Scarecrow, "What a sweet disposition that creature has. I advise you to chop it up for kindling wood and use me to ride upon. My back is flat and you can't fall off." "I think the trouble is that you haven't been properly introduced," said the Scarecrow, regarding the Woozy with much wonder, for he had never seen such a queer animal before. The Sawhorse is the favorite steed of Princess Ozma, the ruler of the Land of Oz, and he lives in a stable decorated with pearls and emeralds at the rear of the royal palace. He is swift as the wind, untiring, and is kind to his friends. All the people of Oz respect the Sawhorse highly, and when I visit Ozma she sometimes allows me to ride him, as I am doing today. Now you know what an important personage the Sawhorse is, and if someone, perhaps yourself, will tell me your name, your rank and station, and your history, it will give me pleasure to relate them to the Sawhorse. This will lead to mutual respect and friendship." The Woozy was somewhat abashed by this speech, and did not know how to reply, but Ojo said: "This square beast is called the Woozy, and he isn't of much importance except that he has 3 hairs growing on the tip of his tail." The Scarecrow looked and saw that this was true. "But," said he in a puzzled way, "what makes those 3 hairs important? The Shaggy Man has thousands of hairs, but no one has ever accused him of being important." So Ojo related the sad story of Unc Nunkie's transformation into a marble statue, and told how he had set out to find the things the Crooked Magician wanted in order to make a charm that would restore his uncle to life. One of the requirements was 3 hairs from a Woozy's tail, but not being able to pull out the hairs, they had been obliged to take the Woozy with them. The Scarecrow looked grave as he listened, and he shook his head several times as if in disapproval. "We must see Ozma about this matter," he said. "That Crooked Magician is breaking the law by practicing magic without a license, and I'm not sure Ozma will allow him to restore your uncle to life." "Already I have warned the boy of that," declared the Shaggy Man. At this Ojo began to cry. "I want my Unc Nunkie!" he exclaimed. "I know how he can be restored to life, and I'm going to do it, Ozma or no Ozma. What right has this girl Ruler to keep my Unc Nunkie a statue forever?" "Don't worry about that just now," advised the Scarecrow. "Go on to the Emerald City, and when you reach it have the Shaggy Man take you to see Dorothy. Tell her your story, and I'm sure she will help you. Dorothy is Ozma's best friend, and if you can win her to your side, your uncle is pretty safe to live again." Then he turned to the Woozy and said: "I'm afraid you are not important enough to be introduced to the Sawhorse, after all." "I'm a better beast than he is," retorted the Woozy indignantly. "My eyes can flash fire, and his can't." "Is it true?" inquired the Scarecrow, turning to the Munchkin boy. "Yes," said Ojo, and told how the Woozy had set fire to the fence. "Have you any other accomplishments?" asked the Scarecrow. "I have a most terrible growl that is, sometimes," said the Woozy, as Scraps laughed merrily and the Shaggy Man smiled. But the Patchwork Girl's laugh made the Scarecrow forget all about the Woozy. He said to her: "What an admirable young lady you are, and what jolly good company! We must be better acquainted, for never before have I met a girl with such exquisite coloring or such natural, artless manners." "No wonder they call you the Wise Scarecrow," replied Scraps. "When you arrive at the Emerald City I will see you again," continued the Scarecrow. "Just now I am going to call upon an old friend, an ordinary young lady named Jinjur, who has promised to repaint my left ear for me. You may have noticed that the paint on my left ear has peeled off and faded, which affects my hearing on that side. Jinjur always fixes me up when I get weather worn." "When do you expect to return to the Emerald City?" asked the Shaggy Man. "I'll be there this evening, for I'm anxious to have a long talk with Miss Scraps. How is it, Sawhorse? Are you equal to a swift run?" "Anything that suits you suits me," returned the wooden horse. So the Scarecrow mounted to the jeweled saddle and waved his hat when the Sawhorse darted away so swiftly that they were out of sight in an instant. End of chapter 13.
Chapter 14 of The Patchwork Girl of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 14. Ojo Breaks the Law. "What a queer man," remarked the Munchkin boy when the party had resumed its journey. "And so nice and polite," added Scraps, bobbing her head. "I think he is the handsomest man I've seen since I came to life." "Handsome is as handsome does," quoted the Shaggy Man. "But we must admit that no living Scarecrow is handsomer. The chief merit of my friend is that he is a great thinker, and in Oz it is considered good policy to follow his advice."
I didn't notice any brains in his head," observed the Glass Cat.
"You can't see 'em work, but they're there all right," declared the Shaggy Man. "I hadn't much confidence in his brains myself when first I came to Oz, for a humbug wizard gave them to him, but I was soon convinced that the Scarecrow is really wise, and unless his brains make him so, such wisdom is unaccountable." "Is the Wizard of Oz a humbug?" asked Ojo. "Not now. He was once, but he has reformed and now assists Glinda the Good, who is the Royal Sorceress of Oz and the only one licensed to practice magic or sorcery. Glinda has taught our old Wizard a good many clever things, so he is no longer a humbug." They walked a little while in silence, and then Ojo said: "If Ozma forbids the Crooked Magician to restore Unc Nunkie to life, what shall I do?" The Shaggy Man shook his head. "In that case you can't do anything," he said. "But don't be discouraged yet. We will go to Princess Dorothy and tell her your troubles, and then we will let her talk to Ozma. Dorothy has the kindest little heart in the world, and she has been through so many troubles herself that she is sure to sympathize with you." "Is Dorothy the little girl who came here from Kansas?" asked the boy. "Yes. In Kansas she was Dorothy Gale. I used to know her there, and she brought me to the Land of Oz. But now Ozma has made her a princess, and Dorothy's Aunt Em and Uncle Henry are here too." Here the Shaggy Man uttered a long sigh, and then he continued: "It's a queer country, this Land of Oz, but I like it nevertheless." "What is queer about it?" asked Scraps. "You, for instance," said he. "Did you see no girls as beautiful as I am in your own country?" she inquired. "None with the same gorgeous variegated beauty," he confessed. "In America a girl stuffed with cotton wouldn't be alive, nor would anyone think of making a girl out of a patchwork quilt." "What a queer country America must be!" she exclaimed in great surprise. "The Scarecrow, whom you say is wise, told me I am the most beautiful creature he has ever seen." "I know, and perhaps you are, from a Scarecrow point of view," replied the Shaggy Man; but why he smiled as he said it Scraps could not imagine. As they drew nearer to the Emerald City, the travelers were filled with admiration for the splendid scenery they beheld. Handsome houses stood on both sides of the road, and each had a green lawn before it as well as a pretty flower garden. "In another hour," said the Shaggy Man, "we shall come in sight of the walls of the Royal City." He was walking ahead with Scraps, and behind them came the Woozy and the Glass Cat. Ojo had lagged behind, for in spite of the warnings he had received, the boy's eyes were fastened on the clover that bordered the road of yellow bricks, and he was eager to discover if such a thing as a six-leaved clover really existed. Suddenly he stopped short and bent over to examine the ground more closely. Yes! Here at last was a clover with six spreading leaves. He counted them carefully to make sure. In an instant his heart leaped with joy, for this was one of the important things he had come for, one of the things that would restore dear Unc Nunkie to life. He glanced ahead and saw that none of his companions was looking back. Neither were any other people about.
for it was midway between two houses. The temptation was too strong to be resisted. "I might search for weeks and weeks and never find another six-leaved clover," he told himself, and, quickly plucking the stem from the plant, he placed the prized clover in his basket, covering it with the other things he carried there. Then, trying to look as if nothing had happened, he hurried forward and overtook his comrades. The Emerald City, which is the most splendid as well as the most beautiful city in any fairyland, is surrounded by a high, thick wall of green marble, polished smooth and set with glistening emeralds. There are four gates, one facing the Munchkin country, one facing the country of the Winkies, one facing the country of the Quadlings, and one facing the country of the Gillikins. The Emerald City lies directly in the center of these four important countries of Oz. The gates had bars of pure gold, and on either side of each gateway were built high towers, from which floated gay banners. Other towers were set at distances along the walls, which were broad enough for four people to walk abreast upon. The enclosure, all green and gold and glittering with precious gems, was indeed a wonderful sight to greet our travelers, who first observed it from the top of a little hill. But beyond the wall was the vast city it surrounded, and hundreds of jeweled spires, domes and minarets, flaunting flags and banners, reared their crests far above the towers of the gateways. In the center of the city our friends could see the tops of many magnificent trees, some nearly as tall as the spires of the buildings, and the Shaggy Man told them that these trees were in the royal gardens of Princess Ozma. They stood a long time on the hilltop, feasting their eyes on the splendor of the Emerald City. "Whee!" exclaimed Scraps, clasping her padded hands in ecstasy. "That'll do for me to live in, all right. No more of the Munchkin country for these patches, and no more of the Crooked Magician." "Why, you belong to Dr. Pipt," replied Ojo, looking at her in amazement. "You were made for a servant, Scraps, so you are personal property and not your own mistress." "Bother Dr. Pipt! If he wants me, let him come here and get me. I'm not going back to his den of my own accord, that's certain. Only one place in the Land of Oz is fit to live in, and that's the Emerald City. It's lovely. It's almost as beautiful as I am, Ojo." "In this country," remarked the Shaggy Man, "people live wherever our Ruler tells them to. It wouldn't do to have everyone live in the Emerald City, you know, for some must plow the land and raise grains and fruits and vegetables, while others chop wood in the forests, or fish in the rivers, or herd the sheep and the cattle." "Poor things!" said Scraps. "I'm not sure they are not happier than the city people," replied the Shaggy Man. "There's a freedom and independence in country life that not even the Emerald City can give one. I know that lots of the city people would like to get back to the land. The Scarecrow lives in the country, and so do the Tin Woodman and Jack Pumpkinhead. Yet all three would be welcome to live in Ozma's palace if they cared to. Too much splendor becomes tiresome, you know. But if we're to reach the Emerald City before sundown, we must hurry, for it is yet a long way off." The entrancing sight of the city had put new energy into them all, and they hurried forward with lighter steps than before. There was much to interest them along the roadway, for the houses were now set more closely together and they met a good many people who were coming or going from one place to another. All these seemed happy faced, pleasant people, who nodded graciously to the strangers as they passed and exchanged words of greeting. At last they reached the great gateway just as the sun was setting and adding its red glow to the glitter of the emeralds on the green walls and spires. Somewhere inside the city a band could be heard playing sweet music. A soft, subdued hum, as of many voices, reached their ears. From the neighboring yards came the low mooing of cows waiting to be milked. They were almost at the gate when the golden bars slid back and a tall soldier stepped out and faced them. Ojo thought he had never seen so tall a man before. The soldier wore a handsome green and gold uniform with a tall hat in which was a waving plume, and he had a belt thickly encrusted with jewels. But the most peculiar thing about him was his long green beard, which fell far below his waist and perhaps made him seem taller than he really was. "Halt!" said the soldier with the green whiskers, not in a stern voice, but rather in a friendly tone. They halted before he spoke and stood looking at him. "Good evening, Colonel," said the Shaggy Man. "What's the news since I left? Anything important?" "Billina has hatched out 13 new chickens," replied the soldier with the green whiskers, "and they're the cutest little fluffy yellow balls you ever saw. The yellow hen is mighty proud of those children, I can tell you." "She has a right to be," agreed the Shaggy Man. "Let me see; that's about 7,000 chicks she has hatched out, isn't it, General?" "That, at least," was the reply. "You will have to visit Billina and congratulate her." "It will give me pleasure to do that," said the Shaggy Man. "But you will observe that I have brought some strangers home with me. I'm going to take them to see Dorothy." "One moment, please," said the soldier, barring the way as they started to enter the gate. "I am on duty and I have orders to execute. Is anyone in your party named Ojo the Unlucky?" "Why, that's me!" cried Ojo, astonished at hearing his name on the lips of a stranger. The soldier with the green whiskers nodded. "I thought so," said he, "and I am sorry to announce that it is my painful duty to arrest you." "Arrest me!" exclaimed the boy. "What for?" "I haven't looked to see," answered the soldier. Then he drew a paper from his breast pocket and glanced at it. "Oh, yes. You are to be arrested for willfully breaking one of the laws of Oz." "Breaking a law?" said Scraps. "Nonsense, soldier; you're joking." "Not this time," returned the soldier with a sigh. "My dear child, what are you? A rummage sale or a guess me quick? In me you behold the bodyguard of our gracious ruler, Princess Ozma, as well as the royal army of Oz and the police force of the Emerald City." "And only one man?" exclaimed the Patchwork Girl. "Only one, and plenty enough. In my official positions I've had nothing to do for a good many years, so long that I began to fear I was absolutely useless until today. An hour ago I was called to the presence of Her Highness, Ozma of Oz, and told to arrest a boy named Ojo the Unlucky, who was journeying from the Munchkin Country to the Emerald City and would arrive in a short time. This command so astonished me that I nearly fainted, for it is the first time anyone has merited arrest since I can remember. You are rightly named Ojo the Unlucky, my poor boy, since you have broken a law of Oz." "But you are wrong," said Scraps. "Ozma is wrong. You are all wrong, for Ojo has broken no law." "Then he will soon be free again," replied the soldier with the green whiskers. "Anyone accused of crime is given a fair trial by our ruler and has every chance to prove his innocence. But just now Ozma's orders must be obeyed." With this he took from his pocket a pair of handcuffs made of gold and set with rubies and diamonds, and these he snapped over Ojo's wrists. End of chapter 14. Chapter 15 of the Patchwork Girl of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 15: Ozma's Prisoner. The boy was so bewildered by this calamity that he made no resistance at all. He knew very well he was guilty, but it surprised him that Ozma also knew it. He wondered how she had found out so soon that he had picked the six-leaved clover. He handed his basket to Scraps and said, "Keep that until I get out of prison. If I never get out, take it to the Crooked Magician to whom it belongs." The Shaggy Man had been gazing earnestly in the boy's face, uncertain whether to defend him or not. But something he read in Ojo's expression made him draw back and refuse to interfere to save him. The Shaggy Man was greatly surprised and grieved, but he knew that Ozma never made mistakes, and so Ojo must really have broken the law of Oz. The Soldier with the Green Whiskers now led them all through the gate and into a little room built in the wall. Here sat a jolly little man, richly dressed in green and having around his neck a heavy gold chain, to which a number of great golden keys were attached. This was the Guardian of the Gate, and at the moment they entered his room he was playing a tune upon a mouth organ. "Listen," he said, holding up his hand for silence. "I've just composed a tune called 'The Speckled Alligator.' It's in patch time, which is much superior to ragtime, and I've composed it in honor of the Patchwork Girl, who has just arrived." "How did you know I had arrived?" asked Scraps, much interested. "It's my business to know who's coming, for I'm the Guardian of the Gate. Keep quiet while I play you 'The Speckled Alligator.'" It wasn't a very bad tune, nor a very good one, but all listened respectfully while he shut his eyes and swayed his head from side to side and blew the notes from the little instrument. When it was all over, the Soldier with the Green Whiskers said, "Guardian, I have here a prisoner." "Good gracious! A prisoner?" cried the little man, jumping up from his chair. "Which one? Not the Shaggy Man?" "No, this boy." "Ah, I hope his fault is as small as himself," said the Guardian of the Gate. "But what can he have done, and what made him do it?" "Can't say," replied the soldier. "All I know is that he has broken the law." "But no one ever does that." "Then he must be innocent, and soon will be released. I hope you are right, Guardian. Just now I am ordered to take him to prison. Get me a prisoner's robe from your official wardrobe." The Guardian unlocked a closet and took from it a white robe, which the soldier threw over Ojo. It covered him from head to foot, but had two holes just in front of his eyes, so he could see where to go. In this attire the boy presented a very quaint appearance. As the Guardian unlocked a gate leading from his room into the streets of the Emerald City, the Shaggy Man said to Scraps, "I think I shall take you directly to Dorothy, as the Scarecrow advised, and the Glass Cat and the Woozy may come with us. Ojo must go to prison with the Soldier with the Green Whiskers, but he will be well treated and you need not worry about him." "What will they do with him?" asked Scraps. "That I cannot tell. Since I came to the Land of Oz, no one has ever been arrested or imprisoned until Ojo broke the law." "Seems to me that girl Ruler of yours is making a big fuss over nothing," remarked Scraps, tossing her yarn hair out of her eyes with a jerk of her patched head. "I don't know what Ojo has done, but it couldn't be anything very bad, for you and I were with him all the time." The Shaggy Man made no reply to this speech, and presently the Patchwork Girl forgot all about Ojo in her admiration of the wonderful city she had entered. They soon separated from the Munchkin boy, who was led by the Soldier with the Green Whiskers down a side street toward the prison. Ojo felt very miserable and greatly ashamed of himself, but he was beginning to grow angry because he was treated in such a disgraceful manner. Instead of entering the splendid Emerald City as a respectable traveler who was entitled to a welcome and to hospitality, he was being brought in as a criminal, handcuffed and in a robe that told all he met of his deep disgrace. Ojo was by nature gentle and affectionate, and if he had disobeyed the law of Oz, it was to restore his dear Unc Nunkie to life. His fault was more thoughtless than wicked, but that did not alter the fact that he had committed a fault. At first he had felt sorrow and remorse, but the more he thought about the unjust treatment he had received, unjust merely because he considered it so, the more he resented his arrest, blaming Ozma for making foolish laws and then punishing folks who broke them. Only a six-leaved clover, a tiny green plant growing neglected and trampled underfoot. What harm could there be in picking it? Ojo began to think Ozma must be a very bad and oppressive ruler for such a lovely fairyland as Oz. The Shaggy Man said the people loved her, but how could they? The little Munchkin boy was so busy thinking these things, which many guilty prisoners have thought before him, that he scarcely noticed all the splendor of the city streets through which they passed. Whenever they met any of the happy, smiling people, the boy turned his head away in shame, although no one knew who was beneath the robe. By and by they reached a house built just beside the great city wall, but in a quiet, retired place. It was a pretty house, neatly painted and with many windows. Before it was a garden filled with blooming flowers. The soldier with the green whiskers led Ojo up the gravel path to the front door, on which he knocked. A woman opened the door and, seeing Ojo in his white robe, exclaimed, "Goodness me! A prisoner at last! But what a small one, soldier!" "The size doesn't matter, Tollydiggle, my dear. The fact remains that he is a prisoner," said the soldier, "and this being the prison and you the jailer, it is my duty to place the prisoner in your charge." "True. Come in, then, and I'll give you a receipt for him." They entered the house and passed through a hall to a large circular room, where the woman pulled the robe off from Ojo and looked at him with kindly interest. The boy, on his part, was gazing around him in amazement, for never had he dreamed of such a magnificent apartment as this in which he stood. The roof of the dome was of colored glass, worked into beautiful designs. The walls were paneled with plates of gold, decorated with gems of great size and many colors, and upon the tiled floor were soft rugs delightful to walk upon. The furniture was framed in gold and upholstered in satin brocade, and it consisted of easy chairs, divans and stools in great variety. Also there were several tables with mirror tops, and cabinets filled with rare and curious things. In one place a case filled with books stood against the wall, and elsewhere Ojo saw a cupboard containing all sorts of games. "May I stay here a little while before I go to prison?" asked the boy pleadingly. "Why, this is your prison," replied Tollydiggle, "and in me behold your jailer. Take off those handcuffs, soldier, for it is impossible for anyone to escape from this house." "I know that very well," replied the soldier, and at once unlocked the handcuffs and released the prisoner. The woman touched a button on the wall and lighted a big chandelier that hung suspended from the ceiling, for it was growing dark outside. Then she seated herself at a desk and asked, "What name?" "Ojo the Unlucky," answered the soldier with the green whiskers. "Unlucky? Ah, that accounts for it," said she. "What crime?" "Breaking a law of Oz." "All right. There's your receipt, soldier. And now I'm responsible for the prisoner." "I'm glad of it, for this is the first time I've ever had anything to do in my official capacity," remarked the jailer in a pleased tone. "It's the same with me, Tollydiggle," laughed the soldier. "But my task is finished, and I must go and report to Ozma that I've done my duty like a faithful police force, a loyal army and an honest bodyguard, as I hope I am." Saying this, he nodded farewell to Tollydiggle and Ojo and went away. "Now then," said the woman briskly, "I must get you some supper, for you are doubtless hungry. What would you prefer? Planked whitefish, omelet with jelly, or mutton chops with gravy? Ojo thought about it. Then he said, "I'll take the chops, if you please." "Very well. Amuse yourself while I'm gone. I won't be long." And then she went out by a door and left the prisoner alone. Ojo was much astonished, for not only was this unlike any prison he had ever heard of, but he was being treated more as a guest than a criminal. There were many windows, and they had no locks. There were 3 doors to the room, and none were bolted. He cautiously opened one of the doors and found it led into a hallway, but he had no intention of trying to escape. If his jailer was willing to trust him in this way, he would not betray her trust. And moreover, a hot supper was being prepared for him, and his prison was very pleasant and comfortable. So he took a book from the case and sat down in a big chair to look at the pictures. This amused him until the woman came in with a large tray and spread a cloth on one of the tables. Then she arranged his supper, which proved the most varied and delicious meal Ojo had ever eaten in his life. Tollydiggle sat near him while he ate, sewing on some fancy work she held in her lap. When he had finished, she cleared the table and then read to him a story from one of the books. "Is this really a prison?" he asked when she had finished reading. "Indeed it is," she replied. "It is the only prison in the Land of Oz." "And I am a prisoner?" "Bless the child! Of course." "Then why is the prison so fine, and why are you so kind to me?" he earnestly asked. Tollydiggle seemed surprised by the question, but she presently answered: "We consider a prisoner unfortunate. He is unfortunate in 2 ways: because he has done something wrong, and because he is deprived of his liberty. Therefore we should treat him kindly because of his misfortune, for otherwise he would become hard and bitter and would not be sorry he had done wrong. Ozma thinks that one who has committed a fault did so because he was not strong and brave. Therefore she puts him in prison to make him strong and brave. When that is accomplished, he is no longer a prisoner, but a good and loyal citizen, and everyone is glad that he is now strong enough to resist doing wrong. You see, it is kindness that makes one strong and brave, and so we are kind to our prisoners." Ojo thought this over very carefully. "I had an idea," said he, "that prisoners were always treated harshly to punish them." "That would be dreadful!" cried Tollydiggle. "Isn't one punished enough in knowing he has done wrong? Don't you wish, Ojo, with all your heart, that you had not been disobedient and broken a law of Oz?" "I I hate to be different from other people," he admitted. "Yes, one likes to be respected as highly as his neighbors are," said the woman. "When you are tried and found guilty, you will be obliged to make amends in some way. I don't know just what Ozma will do to you, because this is the first time one of us has broken a law, but you may be sure she will be just and merciful. Here in the Emerald City, people are too happy and contented ever to do wrong. But perhaps you came from some faraway corner of our land, and having no love for Ozma carelessly broke one of her laws." "Yes," said Ojo. "I've lived all my life in the heart of a lonely forest, where I saw no one but dear Unc Nunkie." "I thought so," said Tollydiggle. "But now we have talked enough, so let us play a game until bedtime." End of chapter 15. Chapter 16 of The Patchwork Girl of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 16. Princess Dorothy. Dorothy Gale was sitting in one of her rooms in the royal palace, while curled up at her feet was a little black dog with a shaggy coat and very bright eyes. She wore a plain white frock, without any jewels or other ornaments except an emerald green hair ribbon, for Dorothy was a simple little girl and had not been in the least spoiled by the magnificence surrounding her. Once the child had lived on the Kansas prairies, but she seemed marked for adventure, for she had made several trips to the Land of Oz before she came to live there for good. Her very best friend was the beautiful Ozma of Oz, who loved Dorothy so well that she kept her in her own palace so as to be near her. The girl's Uncle Harry and Aunt Em, the only relatives she had in the world, had been brought here by Ozma and given a pleasant home. Dorothy knew almost everybody in Oz, and it was she who had discovered the Scarecrow, the Tin Woodman and the Cowardly Lion, as well as Tik Tok, the Clockwork Man. Her life was very pleasant now, and although she had been made a Princess of Oz by her friend Ozma, she did not care much to be a princess, and remained as sweet as when she had been plain Dorothy Gale of Kansas. Dorothy was reading a book this evening when Jellia Jam, the favorite servant maid of the palace, came to say that the Shaggy Man wanted to see her. "All right," said Dorothy. "Tell him to come right up." "But he has some queer creatures with him, some of the queerest I've ever laid eyes on," reported Jellia. "Never mind; let 'em all come up," replied Dorothy. But when the door opened to admit not only the Shaggy Man, but Scraps, the Woozy, and the Glass Cat, Dorothy jumped up and looked at her strange visitors in amazement. The Patchwork Girl was the most curious of all, and Dorothy was uncertain at first whether Scraps was really alive, or only a dream or a nightmare. Toto, her dog, slowly uncurled himself, and going to the Patchwork Girl, sniffed at her inquisitively, but soon he lay down again, as if to say he had no interest in such an irregular creation. "You're a new one to me," Dorothy said reflectively, addressing the Patchwork Girl. "I can't imagine where you've come from." "Who, me?" asked Scraps, looking around the pretty room instead of at the girl. "Oh, I come from a bed quilt, I guess. That's what they say, anyhow. Some call it a crazy quilt and some a patchwork quilt. But my name is Scraps, and now you know all about me." "Not quite all," returned Dorothy with a smile. "I wish you'd tell me how you came to be alive." "That's an easy job," said Scraps, sitting upon a big upholstered chair and making the springs bounce her up and down. "Margolotte wanted a slave, so she made me out of an old bed quilt she didn't use. Cotton stuffing, suspender button eyes, red velvet tongue, pearl beads for teeth. The Crooked Magician made a powder of life, sprinkled me with it, and here I am. Perhaps you've noticed my different colors. A very refined and educated gentleman named the Scarecrow, whom I met, told me I am the most beautiful creature in all Oz, and I believe it." "Oh, have you met our Scarecrow, then?" asked Dorothy, a little puzzled to understand the brief history related. "Yes; isn't he jolly?" "The Scarecrow has many good qualities," replied Dorothy. "But I'm sorry to hear all this about the Crooked Magician. Ozma'll be mad as hops when she hears he's been doing magic again. She told him not to." "He only practices magic for the benefit of his own family," explained Bungle, who was keeping at a respectful distance from the little black dog. "Dear me!" said Dorothy. "I hadn't noticed you before. Are you glass, or what?" "I'm glass, and transparent, too, which is more than can be said of some folks," answered the cat. "Also, I have some lovely pink brains. You can see 'em work." "Oh, is that so? Come over here and let me see." The Glass Cat hesitated, eyeing the dog. "Send that beast away and I will," she said. "Beast? Why, that's my dog Toto, and he's the kindest dog in all the world. Toto knows a good many things, too, most as much as I do, I guess."
"Why doesn't he say anything?"
asked Bungle. "He can't talk, not being a fairy dog," explained Dorothy. "He's just a common United States dog, but that's a good deal, and I understand him, and he understands me just as well as if he could talk." Toto, at this, got up and rubbed his head softly against Dorothy's hand, which she held out to him, and he looked up into her face as if he had understood every word she had said. "This cat, Toto," she said to him, "is made of glass, so you mustn't bother it or chase it any more than you do my pink kitten. It's probably brittle and might break if it bumped against anything." "Ruff," said Toto, and that meant he understood. The Glass Cat was so proud of her pink brains that she ventured to come close to Dorothy in order that the girl might see 'em work. This was really interesting, but when Dorothy patted the cat she found the glass cold and hard and unresponsive, so she decided at once that Bungle would never do for a pet. "What do you know about the Crooked Magician who lives on the mountain?" asked Dorothy.
"He made me," replied the cat, "so I know all about him. The Patchwork Girl is new, 3 or 4 days old, but I've lived with Dr. Pip for years, and though I don't much care for him, I will say that he has always refused to work magic for any of the people who come to his house. He thinks there's no harm in doing magic things for his own family, and he made me out of glass because the meat cats drink too much milk. He also made Scraps come to life so she could do the housework for his wife, Margalotte."
"Then why did you both leave him?" asked Dorothy. "I think you'd better let me explain that," interrupted the Shaggy Man. And then he told Dorothy all of Ojo's story, and how Unc Nunkie and Margalotte had accidentally been turned to marble by the liquid of petrifaction. Then he related how the boy had started out in search of the things needed to make the magic charm which would restore the unfortunates to life, and how he had found the Woozy and taken him along because he could not pull the 3 hairs out of its tail. Dorothy listened to all this with much interest, and thought that so far Ojo had acted very well. But when the Shaggy Man told her of the Munchkin boy's arrest by the Soldier with the Green Whiskers because he was accused of willfully breaking a law of Oz, the little girl was greatly shocked. "What do you suppose he's done?" she asked. "I fear he has picked a 6-leaved clover," answered the Shaggy Man sadly. "I did not see him do it, and I warned him that to do so was against the law. But perhaps that is what he did, nevertheless." "I'm sorry about that," said Dorothy gravely, "for now there will be no one to help his poor uncle and Margalotte 'cept this Patchwork Girl, the Woozy, and the Glass Cat."
"Don't mention it," said Scraps. "That's no affair of mine. Margalotte and Unc Nunkie are perfect strangers to me. For the moment I came to life they came to marble."
"I see," remarked Dorothy with a sigh of regret. "The woman forgot to give you a heart."
"I'm glad she did," retorted the Patchwork Girl.
"A heart must be a great annoyance to one. It makes a person feel sad or sorry or devoted or sympathetic, all of which sensations interfere with one's happiness."
"I have a heart," murmured the Glass Cat. "It's made of a ruby, but I don't imagine I shall let it bother me about helping Unc Nunkie and Margalotte."
"That's a pretty hard heart of yours," said Dorothy. "And the Woozy, of course." "Why, as for me," observed the Woozy, who was reclining on the floor with his legs doubled under him so that he looked much like a square box, "I have never seen those unfortunate people you are speaking of, and yet I am sorry for them, having at times been unfortunate myself.
When I was shut up in that forest, I longed for someone to help me, and by, Ojo came and did help me. So I'm willing to help his uncle. I'm only a stupid beast, Dorothy, but I can't help that. And if you'll tell me what to do to help Ojo and his uncle, I'll gladly do it." Dorothy walked over and patted the Woozy on his square head. "You're not pretty," she said, "but I like you. What are you able to do? Anything special?" "I can make my eyes flash fire, real fire, when I'm angry. When anyone says 'Crizzle Crew' to me, I get angry, and then my eyes flash fire." "I don't see as fireworks could help Ojo's uncle," remarked Dorothy. "Can you do anything else?" "I I thought I had a very terrifying growl," said the Woozy with hesitation, "but perhaps I was mistaken." "Yes," said the Shaggy Man, "you are certainly wrong about that." Then he turned to Dorothy and added, "What will become of the Munchkin boy?" "I don't know," she said, shaking her head thoughtfully. "Ozma will see him 'bout it, of course, and then she'll punish him. But how, I don't know, 'cause no one has ever been punished in Oz since I knew anything about the place. Too bad, Shaggy Man, isn't it?" While they were talking, Scraps had been roaming around the room and looking at all the pretty things it contained. She had carried Ojo's basket in her hand until now, when she decided to see what was inside it. She found the bread and the cheese, which she had no use for, and the bundle of charms, which were curious but quite a mystery to her. Then, turning these over, she came upon the 6-leaved clover which the boy had plucked. Scraps was quick-witted, and although she had no heart, she recognized the fact that Ojo was her first friend. She knew at once that because the boy had taken the clover he had been imprisoned, and she understood that Ojo had given her the basket so they would not find the clover in his possession and have proof of his crime. So, turning her head to see that no one noticed her, she took the clover from the basket and dropped it into a golden vase that stood on Dorothy's table. Then she came forward and said to Dorothy: "I wouldn't care to help Ojo's uncle, but I might help Ojo. He did not break the law. No one can prove he did. And that green-whiskered soldier had no right to arrest him." "Ozma ordered the boy's arrest," said Dorothy, "and of course she knew what she was doing. But if you can prove Ojo is innocent they will set him free at once." "They'll have to prove him guilty, won't they?" asked Scraps. "I suppose so." "Well, they can't do that," declared the Patchwork Girl. As it was nearly time for Dorothy to dine with Ozma, which she did every evening, she rang for a servant and ordered the Woozy taken to a nice room and given plenty of such food as he liked best. "That's honey bees," said the Woozy. "You can't eat honey bees, but you'll be given something just as nice," Dorothy told him. Then she had the Glass Cat taken to another room for the night, and the Patchwork Girl she kept in one of her own rooms, for she was much interested in the strange creature and wanted to talk with her again and try to understand her better. End of Chapter 16. Chapter 17 of The Patchwork Girl of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 17. Ozma and Her Friends. The Shaggy Man had a room of his own in the royal palace, so there he went to change his shaggy suit of clothes for another just as shaggy but not so dusty from travel. He selected a costume of pea green and pink satin and velvet, with embroidered shags on all the edges and iridescent pearls for ornaments. Then he bathed in an alabaster pool and brushed his shaggy hair and whiskers the wrong way to make them still more shaggy. This accomplished, and arrayed in his splendid shaggy garments, he went to Ozma's banquet hall and found the Scarecrow, the Wizard and Dorothy already assembled there.
The Scarecrow had made a quick trip and returned to the Emerald City with his left ear freshly painted. A moment later, while they all stood in waiting, a servant threw open the door, the orchestra struck up a tune, and Ozma of Oz entered. Much has been told and written concerning the beauty of person and character of this sweet girl ruler of the Land of Oz, the richest, the happiest, and most delightful fairyland of which we have any knowledge. Yet, with all her queenly qualities, Ozma was a real girl and enjoyed the things in life that other real girls enjoy. When she sat on her splendid emerald throne in the great throne room of her palace and made laws and settled disputes and tried to keep all her subjects happy and contented, she was as dignified and demure as any queen might be. But when she had thrown aside her jeweled robe of state and her scepter, and had retired to her private apartments, the girl, joyous, light-hearted, and free, replaced the sedate ruler. In the banquet hall tonight were gathered only old and trusted friends, so here Ozma was herself, a mere girl. She greeted Dorothy with a kiss, the Shaggy Man with a smile, the little old Wizard with a friendly handshake, and then she pressed the Scarecrow's stuffed arm and cried merrily, "What a lovely left ear! Why, it's 100 times better than the old one." "I'm glad you like it," replied the Scarecrow, well pleased. "Ginger did a neat job, didn't she? And my hearing is now perfect. Isn't it wonderful what a little paint will do if it's properly applied?" "It really is wonderful," she agreed, as they all took their seats. "But the Sawhorse must have made his legs twinkle to have carried you so far in one day. I didn't expect you back before tomorrow at the earliest." "Well," said the Scarecrow, "I met a charming girl on the road and wanted to see more of her, so I hurried back." Ozma laughed. "I know," she returned. "It's the Patchwork Girl. She is certainly bewildering, if not strictly beautiful." "Have you seen her, then?" the straw man eagerly asked. "Only in my magic picture, which shows me all scenes of interest in the Land of Oz." "I fear the picture didn't do her justice," said the Scarecrow. "It seems to me that nothing could be more gorgeous," declared Ozma. "Whoever made that patchwork quilt from which Scraps was formed must have selected the gayest and brightest bits of cloth that ever were woven." "I am glad you like her," said the Scarecrow in a satisfied tone. Although the straw man did not eat, not being made so he could, he often dined with Ozma and her companions, merely for the pleasure of talking with them. He sat at the table and had a napkin and plate, but the servants knew better than to offer him food. After a little while he asked, "Where is the Patchwork Girl now?" "In my room," replied Dorothy. "I've taken a fancy to her. She's so queer and uncommon." "She's half crazy, I think," added the Shaggy Man. "But she is so beautiful!" exclaimed the Scarecrow, as if that fact disarmed all criticism. They all laughed at his enthusiasm, but the Scarecrow was quite serious. Seeing that he was interested in Scraps, they forbore to say anything against her. The little band of friends Ozma had gathered around her was so quaintly assorted that much care must be exercised to avoid hurting their feelings or making any one of them unhappy. It was this considerate kindness that held them close friends and enabled them to enjoy one another's society. Another thing they avoided was conversing on unpleasant subjects, and for that reason Ojo and his troubles were not mentioned during the dinner. The Shaggy Man, however, related his adventures with the monstrous plants which had seized and enfolded the travelers, and told how he had robbed Chiss, the giant porcupine, of the quills which it was accustomed to throw at people. Both Dorothy and Ozma were pleased with the exploit and thought it served Chiss right. Then they talked of the woozy, which was the most remarkable animal any of them had ever before seen except, perhaps, the live sawhorse. Ozma had never known that her dominions contained such a thing as a woozy, there being but one in existence, and this being confined in his forest for many years. Dorothy said she believed the woozy was a good beast, honest and faithful, but she added that she did not care much for the glass cat. "Still," said the Shaggy Man, "the Glass Cat is very pretty, and if she were not so conceited over her pink brains, no one would object to her as a companion." The Wizard had been eating silently until now, when he looked up and remarked: "That powder of life which is made by the Crooked Magician is really a wonderful thing, but Dr. Pipt does not know its true value, and he uses it in the most foolish ways." "I must see about that," said Ozma gravely. Then she smiled again and continued in a lighter tone: "It was Dr. Pipt's famous powder of life that enabled me to become the Ruler of Oz." "I've never heard that story," said the Shaggy Man, looking at Ozma questioningly. "Well, when I was a baby girl I was stolen by an old witch named Mombi and transformed into a boy," began the girl Ruler. "I did not know who I was, and when I grew big enough to work, the witch made me wait upon her and carry wood for the fire and hoe in the garden. One day she came back from a journey bringing some of the powder of life which Dr. Pipt had given her. I made a pumpkin headed man and set it up in her path to frighten her, for I was fond of fun and hated the witch. But she knew what the figure was, and to test her powder of life she sprinkled some of it on the man I had made. It came to life and is now our dear friend Jack Pumpkinhead. That night I ran away with Jack to escape punishment, and I took old Mombi's powder of life with me. During our journey we came upon a wooden sawhorse standing by the road, and I used the magic powder to bring it to life. The Sawhorse has been with me ever since. When I got to the Emerald City, the good sorceress Glinda knew who I was and restored me to my proper person when I became the rightful ruler of this land. So you see, had not old Mombi brought home the powder of life, I might never have run away from her and become Ozma of Oz, nor would we have had Jack Pumpkinhead and the Sawhorse to comfort and amuse us." That story interested the Shaggy Man very much, as well as the others, who had often heard it before. The dinner being now concluded, they all went to Ozma's drawing room, where they passed a pleasant evening before it came time to retire. End of Chapter 17. Chapter 9 of the Patchwork Girl of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 9. They Meet the Woozy. There seemed to be very...
And that's the end of it for today. Quite exciting, I tell ya. Some of those old stories are very strange. I should probably shed a little light on things. So yeah, I got some stuff done today. I got to the level 4, I guess. There's 4 areas per level representing the 4 seasons, and that was probably the first time since I started trying again that I actually got to the second level area. I don't know what to call it. Anyway, so I'm doing much. I got a lot further than I normally do. I should have stopped and saved the game before going on to the next spot, but that's okay. Practice makes perfect, right? I just get so annoyed at it. I can only do it so many times in a go. But anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day, night, weekend, whatever, and we'll see you next time. Bye!